the specific players that we have here rather than the general plan for Division B. blitzchung and FroStee. FroStee overall has had, it's fair to say, a very rough go of it here in Grandmasters for this season. He's only really done better, I think, overall, you could argue, than Samuel Sao as the one player who didn't get into top 8 once. FroStee was able to get into top 8 in last week's Swiss. Unfortunately, he just went 0-2 thereafter and didn't really even come close to securing his spot in Division A. Whereas blitzchung was a slightly different story.
Yeah, blitzchung very nearly made it to Division A. Also having a poor performance in the first 2 weeks, but he had that runner run in week 3. I could have chosen a much better phrase for that. If he had just won his semi-final on the weekend, he could have just gotten exactly enough points and the right tiebreaker to take Chonsu's final slot in Division A, but unfortunately he fell short at the very end here. So blitzchung is now in Division B, and both of these players are fighting for their lives. We talked a lot about Kin and blitzchung sharing a lineup without Warrior, and we can see now that he's left it up just like Kin did.
So what's the thinking here? Because we were left a little bit confused after we saw Kin, perform fairly poorly, I think it's fair to say, earlier on today, at least in terms of his lineup rather than his play. And I would argue blitzchung looks like he's in a similarly vulnerable position now with a very strong Warrior left up for FroStee.
It's true. I feel like, again, there is probably some difference in how we perceive the matchups versus how players like Kin and blitzchung does, because we saw this type of dynamic come into play last week, where they were queuing matchups that we thought were poor. They kept doing it so consistently that maybe they were seeing something about it that we were just missing. Like, it seemed that they were happy to run Druids into Paladins or something and Priests into Demon Hunter, even though our stats and I guess other players' opinions would say that it's not actually favored.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've literally just seen a thread that Asmodai was throwing down on Twitter saying, please help me. I'm not crazy, right? Priest doesn't beat Demon Hunter. And it seems that players agree overall. But like you said, there's definitely difference in opinions being thrown down. However, the one commonality shared by both of these players is fear of said Demon Hunter, with a double ban going out either way. I think I'd have to say, looking at the rest of the lineup, it definitely feels like FroStee is in a great spot with his Warrior specifically, up against the Rogue and the Druid. The Hunter, however, which we were saying was potentially the one deck that was very powerful against the Warrior, has this time been left up by FroStee.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that FroStee was like planning to ban Demon Hunter from the get-go. It's more like, my opponent doesn't have a Warrior. Cool, let me ban the other scary deck. That's my guess anyway. There's also just a tech inclusion, or several, from FroStee's zoo that he has here that I want to point out. He's running Abusive Sergeant, and he's running Bluegill Warrior in zoo. And this is something that I am not seeing a lot because I'm not actually sure of the whole reasoning for it, but I do remember that last week, and even as early as our practice last night, we were talking about how, hey, Zoo doesn't run attack buffs anymore in the early game. They wait for the Scrap Imp, and so they kind of fall behind against any minion that has high attack or high health in the early game. So the inclusion of Abusive Sergeant, I think, is potentially very helpful here.
Right, I think that's exactly the point that you've hit on there that I wanted to talk about. It's the potential threat of weird trades coming through, because as soon as your deck has no little combat tricks that you can pull off to swing the battle in your favor, your opponent can just play around what they see, and there's nothing really else that can go on top of that in order to change things around. Whereas even if you're mulliganing away Abusive Sergeant every time, you pray that you never even draw it, because most of the time it's, to be honest, not a very good card. The fact that the threat is there means that your opponent can't play around your stuff quite so predictably, which is why, I haven't seen it before. I'm not going to say that it's a genius inclusion quite yet for FroStee, but I'm at the very least intrigued, and I like the reasoning behind it.
Right. I think it has potential Zoo survive the early turns against something like Demon Hunter, but we see that's not going to come into play here. But taking a look at blitzchung's Hunter, for example, this is Highlander, and you're playing cards like Blazing Battle Mage, Dwarven Sharpshooter, and in blitzchung's case, even Acidic Swamp Ooze and Bone Chewer Brawler with the regular Fairy Dragon. So overall, it seems like almost all of the one-drops from Zoo could benefit from an attack buff to try and fight back against those types of early game as you build up to getting the Scrap Imp game plan online.
Well, the other thing, which I'm sure I don't need to remind you of, Gia, is the fact that Bluegill Warrior can go face. And the buff from Abusive Sergeant can also go face. And that little bit of extra burst damage when you're factoring in the Soulfires, the Stone Tusk Boars, the buffed up Bluegills as well, charging to face. It could potentially function fairly well as just a burst deck after you've drawn your deck with Hand of Gul'dan.
You know, Derek, you keep implying that I love going face because I love playing aggro. I do love playing. I do love playing aggro, but in my video, which was played during this whole break because we thankfully have more break time. Thank you very much, production. I was talking about how good aggro play often involves trading efficiently at the beginning and then you go face. So when I suggest going face, I think it's because it's actually the right play at that point. All right?
I liked my joke better. Stop being right, Gia. That's not what I'm all about. Should have learned this by now.
Fair enough. Let's talk about playing around Seal Fate your own face again.
There we go. That's much more my speed.
Here it is, the Zoo versus Hunter matchup that we said potentially Abusive could play a big role. More so than that, Flame Imp on 1, Scrap Imp on 2, Hand of Gul'dan locked and loaded if he ever draws the Expired Merchant. I'm liking FroStee's start.
Yeah, the inclusion of Flame Imp alone is kind of interesting. I wonder if that ever means that FroStee was planning to ban Demon Hunter, because that's a pretty big reason why Flame Imp was being cut from Zoo, was the power of Demon Hunter. Maybe FroStee thinks the nerfs to it have just kind of neutered its power level enough. But it's an interesting inclusion, and while it's died, it did set him up for a very powerful couple of turns where he is not behind on board at all, and he can get the Expired Merchant, Hand of Gul'dan, insane buff with the Scrap Imp.
This is the dream opener for Zoo. And you know what? FroStee had a lot of bad beats last week, I think. Just honestly pretty unlucky. So let's see if FroStee when he's at his best, you know, with the momentum. So blitzchung here didn't have a very bad opener himself. He had the choice of 2 1-drops and now the buffed Zixor to try and fight back onto the board. It's just going to be a buffed Nightshade taking care of this real cleanly if FroStee wants.
There's just so many answers. Bluegill doesn't quite do it on its own, I suppose, but the argument could be made to just ignore the Zixor and try and go wide on the board. But maybe Nightshade's just so insane discarding the Gul'dan.
I like the look of it. The only thing you have to consider is, okay, what are Hunter's answers against a minion with 2 health remaining? They're, of course, running the 2 weapons, Desert Spear and Stormhammer, can deal with that, and they have the Corrosive Breath. But if those aren't there, this is so much potential damage coming back on the next turn.
Yeah, and also it just gives you such it gives you such strong follow-up on the following turn with all the 1-drops that FroStee can go down, and with a very untimely Zixor Prime off the top there for blitzchung. It is he's left in a bit of a tough situation. He can take out the Nightshade Matron, obviously, but he's not swinging the board by any stretch of the imagination.
Oh, you say that the Zixor is untimely, but I actually think it is going to heavily affect blitzchung's game plan from now on, because he's seen that it's in hand. Maybe he's now thinking, just survive until you can coin this out, and then that's your swing.
And Gian, now he's found the Corrosive Breath, but I don't think he's actually going to pick it here.
Are you looking at Unleash the Hounds?
I'm looking at Unleash the Hounds.
Alright. I can see the reasoning, because he should know there's a fair amount of minions in hand right now. And he's got the answer for the Nightshade anyway.
Right.
But he says he wants the Fellwing on board right now.
Fair enough. Okay. This does allow you to get both down. It's close. Because you know your opponent is very likely to go wide on board on the following turn.
Oh my goodness. FroStee has his pick of premium plays here. He could do some type of carpet game plan, but you know what I really like is playing all of the buffed minions. And at least one of those can be buffed by the Theming Sidekick. So he could take a value trade onto this Fellwing if he wants. But he's gonna play, I guess, a little bit less damage onto the board this turn to make sure that he gets an active carpet next turn that needs answering from blitzchung.
It's a difficult dance, right? Because he wants to be able to set up for powerful turns on the coming up turns, which of course means Carpet is a good way to go about that. But he also wants to make sure he's not being too slow, because then all of a sudden Zephyrus becomes active, Dino Tamer Brand can come down, or maybe even Zixor Prime can come down, and his board just gets cleared up.
And in that sentence, blitzchung played his turn, Rotnest Drake off the top, hitting arguably, I think, the worst minion there. Is the 4-1, just won the very clean trade against the Rotnest. The taunt would allow blitzchung to more cleanly dictate trades later on. And of course, getting rid of a carpet always seems good. So, unfortunate. FroStee, pressure never stops.
And I think it's getting pretty close to the point where FroStee can start ignoring the board and just pushing everything to the face. Again, he does need to be afraid of Zephyrus, especially with a coin still in hand. It could be coin Zephyrus Brawl on this turn to clear everything up for blitzchung.
But he does have 3 charged minions in hand. I think it's just the Bluegill that got the buff.
I think so,
it's
too.
a lot of burst, especially with the Soulfire. So even if FroStee develops a bunch of minions, I think he'll still have the juice to refill on the next turn, especially with his Genius. Blitzchung, we're looking at Zephyrus Brawl just to stay alive.
Well, there are other ways he can survive the turn. Obviously, kill command to take out the expired merchant is, I think, enough just to survive the turn. Maybe it's not, actually. It's a lot of burst damage.
Yeah, he can go Spear, but he has to attack the Voidwalker to even get the Beast on board, and then eventually he'll command the Voidwalker. But that does allow the 1-1 rush to kill the Beaming Sidekick. So I think it might be worth tanking the 2 for that. But blitzchung does not want to take any more damage here. Just set up for Zixor and a prayer.
Too many cards.
Oh, the card we've been talking about this whole time, just overdrawn.
Unfortunate. So is this Bluegill at 4 attack, 5 with the Boar, 7 with the Kobold Lackey, 11 with Soulfire, and 5 on board. Too short of lethal from what I can see, but he's got another Genius if he wants to roll for some more burst.
Yeah, I think he'd just be a mana short then, with all the cards he'd have to play, because that would be a full 7 mana utilized and he wouldn't be able to play Lackey off of that. So instead, I'm happy with just developing what he can and getting all the rest directly to the face.
This matchup doesn't even seem very close as far as the draw quality panned out.
Yeah.
But still, I like to see any bit of optimization where it can be done. Liking the look of the Feywing.
Me too. This is the cheapest one. Don't even mind just playing it now. Yeah, all the boxes are being ticked. Everything that can go face is going face, and lethal is well and truly set up.
I think FroStee also had the option there to trade his Voidwalker, but he preserves the health on it, making sure that, I suppose, any type of cheese win with Dino Tamer Brand is not actually available.
Fair point.
Honestly, he's got enough damage in hand anyway that it won't matter, but there's a Zephyrus.
And if Zephyrus
go for the brawl.
can win the brawl, then that is no longer lethal available for FroStee, I believe.
Correct.
Chaos Nova is not the winning play.
Neither is Earth Elemental. So by process of elimination, which minion is going to be left? The worst one.
That was a close one. Zephyrus was on the edge there of taking the win. But that does mean FroStee is able to take game 1 with his Zoo. I mean, it's got to be said, even discarding the pigs, doesn't matter. He's left with a very, very good starting hand there. That was just the dream start. He got both Scrap Him and, of course, the discard with the hand that pulled down as well. But like you were saying, I think FroStee's owed a little bit of good luck after his bad beats in the previous weeks.
True enough. And As far as the zoo goes, I feel like it was very likely to take a win at some point there, if not against the Highlander Hunter from blitzchung, then against his Druid or his Rogue. Zoo just seems favored across the board, and that's a very good reason, I guess, for queuing it first from FroStee. But now, FroStee's got to win with his remaining decks, one of which is Warrior.
Yeah, the Warrior has been left up now that the Demon Hunter is banned. So it's the Warrior, feeling pretty good, I would say. The Rogue, however, traditionally the weak spot, I say traditionally, over the past couple of hours here that we have spent in APAC Grandmasters for this week. But we'll have to see if he can pull out the win with that one. It is a slightly different build without the secrets. So maybe that was the missing ingredient from these lists to be able to take the convincing win. But before we can jump into that, we're going to go to a quick break to let the players prepare. So don't go anywhere. The conclusion comes right after this.
If I would have to describe myself in 3 words, that would be...
I can be really...
If I had to describe myself in 3 words, that would be cringy, persistent, and thoughtful.
Try hard, shy, and patient.
Try hard, patient, and motivate.
I would say I'm very joyful, happy, awkward.
I am overambitious. I can be really angry at some point, sometimes, and I'm a clown.
Kind, competitive, and calm.
Calm, smart, and sleepy.
Methodical, thoughtful, and British.
3 words? So I will describe myself as an Hearthstone player.
This is Hearthstone Grandmasters for the Asia Pacific region here on YouTube Gaming, where all of Hearthstone Esports will take place this year. So make sure to drop us a subscribe so you know when we are live, and you can always keep up to date with the action, no matter what region you are looking to keep up to date with. Asia Pacific here first, then of course Europe and Americas shortly after. But before we can get onto all that goodness, we have one last fantastic match here for Asia Pacific, and it is going to be now, Gia, the chance for FroStee to play the rarest and at the same time most brought deck of the week in the Warrior.
It is a very, very interesting dynamic that even though Warrior was brought very, very often, it's also banned the most often because it seems like it's just harder to target than Demon Hunter. Even though I think Demon Hunter had a higher bring rate overall, it seems that most of the players have that utmost respect for Warrior outside of blitzchung and Kin. And I'm not saying that they should have the respect, just saying that it's a bit unusual. And so far, I've not really seen the reasoning behind it, but I'm excited to prove us wrong.
Yeah, we are unsure whether it's they don't believe in the deck quite so much. Maybe it's a bit of disrespect to their opponents. It's an incredibly difficult deck to play, and blitzchung could be saying it, I don't think FroStee's got the chops to be able to pilot it correctly against my lineup. Again, we'd have to find out exactly their reasoning. It's not worth speculating too much. But what we can see is how the Warrior is going to perform objectively in this series.
You know what I love, Derek? Because we're playing super high stakes and it's back to Conquest now, it's very easy to guess what players will be queuing up next. It's the deck that has the best matchups remaining. So FroStee, of course, going Warrior over the Rogue. But blitzchung now on Druid. You always say that this matchup is a bit tricky for Druid because Risky Skipper can easily deal with those Glowfly boards, but maybe something like Mount Seller with the Overgrowth in the opener, I love this keep, can actually get blitzchung the sturdiness of board to actually make it through against Warrior.
Yeah, you know what? blitzchung doesn't need Ysera in his deck because he's got the Dream already with Overgrowth and Mount Seller. This is exactly what you're looking for. And now with FroStee having 3 Risky Skippers in his starting hand, weirdly enough, is left actually in a pretty bad spot. You know, we're talking about how Risky Skipper is a good card in the matchup. You don't really want it in your mulligan. You want to be hitting Anchor in order to draw into it. And you also want a lot of the other cards that swing it in your favor. Because I agree, Risky Skipper is a key part of it. But I think another really core part of the thing that makes Warrior in a good spot in this matchup is actually Blood Boil Brute. Being able to consistently get that down for very cheap and take strong value trades is a thing that Druid really struggles to answer because of their lack of strong removal for big minions.
I would agree with that point. Everything you said from the beginning about Risky Skipper not being played on curve but needed on later, it's just really hard to decide because I've heard advice from the inventor of the deck, No Hands Gamer, that there are situations, particularly against Druid, that you might keep Risky Skipper in the opener if you feel like the rest of the hand can support this game plan. But FroStee doesn't really have much anything else to do leading up to that. Ooh, 1 Mount Seller down the drain. blitzchung.
That's definitely not good, but I think he still pretty much can just rely on the first one to get the job done.
Can the Warmaul Challenger target friendly minions?
No, it just targets nothing.
That's too bad. It can't pop the egg! It'd be insane.
Okay, there's some powerful plays leading up here. For FroStee, it's kind of a good thing for him that he's able to get a little bit of pressure early on. If he can find the key cards to translate this into a high amount of damage, like Inner Rage, maybe a Rampage, or a Bloodsworn Mercenary, then maybe it will be a little bit too quick for blitzchung to answer. But I've got to be honest, even with a nice couple of draws for FroStee, I still think blitzchung is just in such a good spot.
And look at blitzchung, doesn't even attack the face with the respect to Battle Rage, I suppose.
Smart.
And yeah, this is actually a position where you're fine to hold off on the face attack because he's not developing any minions, so it's not like FroStee could damage his own face by using a weapon swing. I like it.
Whereas FroStee just rings the bell for service and says, another card on curve, please, from the deck, and is answered, of course, with the Corpron on curve. This is a fair bit of damage. Again, it's got to be said, he is converting it into damage the way I was saying he has to. And that's, again, not a bad top deck, but I'm just not sure it's quite enough.
It's a fair bit of damage, but really, in terms of pressure, only the Corcron was the good minion on curve here. Warmaul, in this particular situation, just a 1-attack minion. A singular 3-mana 1/10. It doesn't quite get there against what's about to be a mega pop-off from blitzchung.
Yeah, this is absolutely insane. No two ways about it.
I haven't seen any Griffins today. Are you feeling it this time, Darren?
I'm always feeling the Griffin. Oh, the double Ravens, though. That's pretty good. Just more damage. We're potentially looking at just insta-reverse lethal for blitzchung.
Yeah, we really are. No Armor Smith in hand. You know, if you told me that I could play 3 Risky Skipper in my deck, I'd be signing up for that immediately. But
Me too.
Right now, not really working out in FroStee's favor. So one Iron
Ironbark,
Bark.
I am definitely expecting to come down on the single biggest minion. While some lists of Warrior have started taking in Executes, that is not what FroStee has gone for, so this is very likely to tank a lot of damage.
Well, that's a board. And that's a Blood Boil.
It's a pretty good top deck.
So, okay. You play a Skipper, you play another Skipper, and you play the third Skipper. How many procs is that in total?
4?
Yes, I think so.
No, 3. Right?
I'll show you who's boss.
Because the first one activates on the second one, and then it activates twice when you play the last one.
Okay.
So 3 overall, yeah. I mean, he doesn't have to play the third one. I'm thinking he'd go for the Blood Boil Brute here instead, after potentially trading away the Bomb Wrangler, just so that he has enough room to summon the bomb.
Right. Yeah. This works out very awkwardly in terms of boards.
It does. It really does. Yep, I think this is the right way to do it. You gotta hope to get a bit lucky with the bombs here as well.
And where are we gonna land? Ooh, the read on the Mount Seller is absolutely huge. My gosh.
Okay. Fair enough. That was a much better clear than I was expecting FroStee to be able to deliver.
Me too. And in many situations, you'd expect the opposing deck to gas out after a clear like that, but blitzchung just has the overflow. FroStee, not even a damage on his face. Even if he gets Battle Rage off the top, won't be able to use it.
That's true.
I don't see a way back for Warrior in this situation.
Yeah, the Ysera is just too powerful on the following turn, even with the
Okay.
Iron Bark as well. Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, the cash off the top, probably close to the best card you could have top decked. So now we're looking at Ethereal Lackey into some type of, I would say burst damage, but seeing Blitzchung's hand, there's far too much healing. But from FroStee's perspective, surely he's just looking at shipping it all face and getting some type of inner rage top deck with this Grom.
Yep. He could get an Execute or something off of the Ethereal Lackey. Again, assuming he gets it, because we can clearly see he's kind of in the position where he has to hit that if he wants to be able to win this board.
My dream is your nightmare.
Ooh. Giant Ysera.
FroStee has been nothing if not stoic up until now, but that is the straw that broke the camel's back. As you know, we can see that classic FroStee that we know and love, giving us a little bit of the. Okay, I've just been got here.
Doesn't look like a straw to me. That's the dragon that broke the camel's back. But to be fair, FroStee looks nothing like a camel.
That is one dead camel.
Yikes.
Charge on Terran allows it to like attack in immediately. That doesn't do anything though.
Well, you could like evolve this Lackey, play the risky, Terran the board, charge the Terran, and then everything gets resolved. I don't know.
Yeah.
Be cute.
Very cute. Not good though.
Oh, the Reborn. That's pretty good with Terran.
True.
So I think that blitzchung probably doesn't need to pay any heed to this Terran. Just making room for the overflow, I like it. And probably ship everything to the face.
Yeah, the only real consideration was whether you go for the draw or the globalize, and this just feels significantly better to me. The amount of pressure that you are likely to put on is so high.
Number 3.
Whoa.
Dragon number 4. So if one dragon broke the camel's back there, what are 5 dragons gonna do to that poor camel?
It is a camel pancake at this point. There is not much left.
Time waits for no one.
Respect! Everything cleared. You cannot even play a battle rage for 1 minion, FroStee. That's what blitzchung is saying.
I like it. There is just no way he loses. The only way that this board dies is through brawl off of a lackey, off of the weapon, which means he'd have to tank at least 5 damage first.
I don't know, I kind of like the face attack better. I feel like the lackey into brawl out is more likely than FroStee getting some miracle battle rage. Especially since from blitzchung's perspective, FroStee's played both risky. He didn't know about the third.
Fair enough. But that does either way mean that it is a very decisive win, it's fair to say there, for the Druid, for blitzchung. It was a rough start for FroStee, and I think, just by playing out his minions on curve, that was definitely the best way he could have approached it. The one weird pan out was the fact that it would have been almost better for him if he hadn't played the egg on turn 2, actually, because that would have freed up more board space for more bombs when the big risky skipper turn rolled around. That's obviously very, very difficult to see, and probably, on average, it's worth playing it for the potential of drawing Terran off the top. But, even getting without that for it, I think FroStee gave it the best chance he could. But in the end, it was just the Dream Druid hand.
Yeah. On top of that, I think it merits some discussion about Warrior, because we're far and away on the camp that says that Warrior is good, you should ban it, you should be prepared for it if you're going to leave it up, and, I don't know, have a very solid game plan. But there have been games we've seen that Warrior just whiffs. Sometimes it's by not ever getting the Battle Rage. Sometimes it's by not ever getting the Armor Smith that it needs to fight against aggro decks. And maybe this could be the one crack in Warrior's armor, that because they're so flexible and they have so many cards that can win them different game plans, maybe it doesn't consistently get the game plan it needs for this specific situation.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes it just draws dead like that, and there's not really much you can do. Overall, I feel like most of the game plans are good enough to transition into most other matchups, but I definitely see your point that if you're not finding the perfect early game, the Dream Druid draw is likely to outclass you anyway. But with the Warrior still available for FroStee to play, I think he's got himself at least a decent matchup now up against the Rogue. And, while we've been saying that the Hunter feels like the good matchup out of the few up against Warrior, I'd be hesitant to call it very favored at all.
I wouldn't say very favored, just because I do have tons of respect for Warrior. But it seems like one of the decks that can go into the long game, and they don't let up the mid-game pressure. And the way that Hunter builds boards is not really wide and small, which is what Warrior likes to prey on, but rather decent statted turn after turn. And maybe it's those single big threats that Warrior would struggle to deal with compared to other matchups.
That is definitely true. And for the curve here for blitzchung, he may be able to do that right from the start. 2-drop, 3-drop, 4-drop. Looks fantastic to me.
What?
But he is instead saying, I want the power cards in this matchup.
Both of those look like power cards to me. Okay, maybe not so much Fairy Dragon, because low health can tend to be dealt with by weapons from the Warrior. But the Evasive, I feel like, was just okay. And the Animal Companion, of course. Okay, I think
so too.
I'm thoroughly convinced now, after seeing this mulligan, that blitzchung and Yin clearly did something in their playtesting that we're not aware of.
If I had to hazard a guess, I would say they came to the conclusion that playing this deck like a Hearthstone deck does not beat Warrior. Playing out your minions on curve, going for tempo, and trying to kill them over the mid to late game doesn't really work because of the power swings that Warrior is able to pull off. And therefore, looking for Zephrys for Wild Growth, probably specifically, to try and ramp up into Dino Tamer Bran, I think is like the fanciest thing that you can pull off as Hunter, which is, for the most part, a pretty linear deck.
Right, I can see that, especially since it draws a parallel to, say, Highlander Mage, which a few weeks ago we were saying as maybe this deck also gets there against Warrior, because it also has that similar style of minion threats it wants to build, which is a few, but big, and that is difficult for Warrior to deal with. Let's see how it pans out. Wow, Horde Pillager's pretty premium.
Yeah, it's not bad at all. Obviously, he needs the weapon first, or it's just a 4-2, but you're not too sad to see that.
Yeah, I think outside of the chance of drawing the weapons themselves with the double Corsair Cache and eventually Battle Rage, you can definitely see the Horde Pillager getting value at some point.
I think for blitzchung here, I'm actually wondering if the best play is literally do nothing rather than hero power, because obviously again there's the battle rage, which maybe you just want to start getting the damage through as hunter because you're trying to kill them rather than just build an overwhelming board like druid. But I think I would rather keep the coin than coin out Desert Spear to kill off a 1-2 on this turn.
It's really close. Oh, blitzchung is your man. I definitely like not coining out Desert Spear. I was just not too sure about whether he could just completely pass as well. And FroStee's got his facial expression is pretty much what I look like in my brain. Like, what? Mm-hmm. And so he thinks, does he actually...
I do like the idea that my 2 brain cells left over are just FroStee's doing different thinking expressions at each other, trying to piece together what on earth is going on.
Poor FroStee. I accidentally called him a camel, and now you've called him your brain cells. Okay, Desert Spear finally coming down.
I really do like the Warmaul as well on turn 3 there. It's a card that, when I first started playing Warrior, or this version of Warrior, I definitely prioritized using it for the Battle Cry too much, whereas the Battle Cry is sometimes almost a downside because of situations like this, where you just hit a 110 onto the board, copy it, and you're so far in the lead.
This is the dream for FroStee. And blitzchung took this game plan of mulliganing away a strong curve and deliberately not hero powering, which makes us think there's something up his sleeve, but I wonder if that's something which probably involves a lot of waiting and then trying to get your brand to stick. Does that actually work against this pan out from Warrior, which is not all that uncommon, to be honest?
Well, to be fair to him, if he had kept the other hand of Fairy Dragon Animal Companion plus Fey Wing, or even just 2 out of the 3 of those, that would also have been pretty weak against this game plan from FroStee. Whereas, if just Fairy Dragon had come down, he could have attacked it with the Brawler.
Or Livewire Lance. But at the very least, those minions would have slowed down FroStee from being able to just tank away at blitzchung's face. Because as I'm seeing it, FroStee has just been completely uncontested.
True. I mean, it's difficult to find a hand that effectively fights back against the 2/3/9s on turn 4.
But look at this, though. He can even Livewire damage himself, draw 3 off the Battle Rage, clear away the Dragonbane, push 6 face.
I love everything you just said.
And so does FroStee. I think he's loving everything about this game so far, but just because blitzchung's early turns were so peculiar, I'm sure FroStee will be racking his brain for what could possibly be up blitzchung's sleeve. And honestly, I am not sure myself.
Yeah, even if Zephyrus came down for the next few turns, it doesn't do that much. It doesn't clear off enough damage from the board. Woof.
That's a yikes from me. So, if he wants to, he could go on 1 Skipper, 1 Bomb Wrangler, and then there would be a lot of damage minions on board, enough to play the Blood Boil, I think.
Wouldn't you rather just play the Blood Boil Brute? I don't think it's necessary to damage your board so much with Risky Skipper.
I just feel that creating bombs helps him push the lethal sooner. Maybe it's a bit punished by something like Zephyrus Brawl, but if that's blitzchung's play for this turn, then FroStee just re-equips his weapon, redevelops, and just closes out the game sooner, as far as I can see.
That definitely incentivizes me to just go Blood Boil and then Witchy it. That seems nuts. And I think even if that hadn't come up, I still prefer this line because it means you have a powerful board now. You're not worrying about, you know, board space issues. And then next turn, if this is cleared by some miracle, you have Risky Skipper Bomb Wranglers. And there is that miracle.
Sure enough. FroStee doesn't even expend the Witchy. He says he wants to use it with a Risky to immediately put as many bombs as possible. You know what?
Zephyrus Brawl, 2 games in a row.
And both games, they're just kind of blitzchung's dying breath. It stalls a little bit at best, and FroStee just takes the lethal anyway. We're almost definitely gonna see it again with the amount of bombs going off next turn. I love it. This is always lethal. Come on.
Is it 2 bombs for 5 damage? It's not even that, right?
Is it just 2? He has 2 Riskies.
Oh, you're thinking double Risky Skipper Bomb Wrangler now. Okay, yeah.
As long as this 3-3 attacks first. 3-2, my bad. Okay, maybe there's something about board space that I'm not seeing.
This only does 1 bomb though, right?
Yeah.
It very likely sets up lethal for the following turn.
Sure.
Especially when you hit 4 damage.
I'm not sure as far as optimization goes because my play would have run into board space issues. I always overlook that. But in any case, I think FroStee has the game won from every angle, whether it's this turn or next. Again, I'm just not seeing what the game plan versus Warrior is supposed to be in blitzchung and Kin's lineups.
Well, to be fair, it's Conquest. One of the things you can say is just, I'll tank a loss against it.
Okay.
I agree that it's still not the right strategy to go for if you're just going into a series expecting your opponent to get an almost guaranteed win with one of the best decks in the game. But it does mean that even if they missed the mark on their estimation of Warrior, it's not going to be necessarily writing them both off for the entire week.
I'm still curious about the mulligan because we did mention that something like Fairy Dragon into Animal Companion into Feywing can be dealt with by things like Livewire Lance, etc. from Warrior. But if you're playing around that, that means you need to have a better game plan in mind, and you're mulliganing for those specific cards. And looking at the decklist from Hunter, I just don't know what those specific cards are outside of the Zephyrus Wild Growth, as you said. And I feel like maybe it was a better chance just to go for that curve and hope that that gets there. Sometimes Warrior doesn't have the answers, and Hunter can pile on the damage in those cases.
Yeah, my second best guess is maybe that he was looking for specifically Stormhammer, which is an incredibly crucial card in a lot of matchups where you can just swing that to face every turn and pray they don't have Armor Smith. It's not a foolproof plan by any stretch of the imagination, but it may have been able to get there.
Well, that's another mystery for another day, I suppose. We now have a good old Rogue Mirror on our hands. Love to see it. And FroStee with the Edwin and the opener with coin. This might be the first big Edwin early we've seen in a while. Just one Hero Cat and Shadow Step away, Dark. I can feel it.
Yeah, I was going to say quite a complex mulligan for FroStee. My first instinct is to do this, where you just toss the Kronks and hold on to the Galakron. Blitzchung on the other side, though, does toss away the Kronks, which, while definitely a very slow play for this matchup, does ensure you to be able to find Galakron for turn 7, which is a crucial card in the matchup.
I almost never kept Trunks as Rogue. I just feel that
Fair enough.
on the 6 mana slot, there's already so much else you want to be doing, like the Togwaggle, or even just 5 cost plus Lackey, etc. And I think his hand was begging for a bit more of early game development. And he gets it, to be fair. That's really good.
Yeah.
He's got the ambush as well.
Yeah, he's got the dream. He can get himself a Praise Galakron, a Lackey, play the spell, or play the Secret, I should say, activate Miscreant the turn after. Ticking all the boxes for me.
FroStee, if he wants, can build the 6/6 right here and now.
It's got some pretty significant downsides, though. The Miscreant can't be activated. The Praise Galakron isn't guaranteed a target if it dies.
I would say
But at the end of all that,
near guaranteed because the 6 health stat line seems very difficult for Rogue to deal with. FroStee takes a halfway play here, which I kind of like as well. 4-4 is still tough for just the Hanar to deal with, but he saves the backstab, not just as a miscreant activator, but also in case some type of minion is generated off of these secrets. Then FroStee has that as an additional removal piece.
yeah, I think this is a very smart play. It's still vulnerable to the best response from blitzchung of secret plus blackjack, but if that does come down, you still have a backstab, which is a huge deal when you're looking for a turn 3 play. So I think very heads up.
Blitzchung's turn is already looking like, yeah, I was saying there's room for deviation here if he wants, because if he gets something like damage lackey, oh my god, that's insane! Maybe not for this turn, but he could have gone for something like Kobold Lackey value trade in step. Okay, that seems slow now that I'm saying it aloud.
Yeah.
But later on, it could be really good.
Absolutely. We do get to see as well the key difference between FroStee's list and the vast majority of other rogues here in Asia Pacific, which is the Spy Mistress that he's putting in instead of the secret package. There's no other stealth cards like the Greyheart Sage. It is so not a true stealth rogue, rather just a little bit of early aggressive potential, as well as another board clear early on against Demon Hunter.
FroStee, of course, very scared of Bamboozle, but he gets the information that that is, in fact, not the secret blade. We do see here from Blitzchung's list, he's running the double ambush and one each of the others, so it is, of course, statistically most likely to be ambush. I think that disincentivizes FroStee from playing the Spy Mistress this turn. But also, if he wants to invoke this turn, he's risking a Dirty Secrets on a Dirty Tricks on the other end. Okay.
I think I like taking the development here because even if your opponent trades a 2-3 into your Edwin, that's not that bad. It's likely to die in the next couple of turns anyway.
Sure.
And if they go for an expected turn 4 play of the Devoted Maniac that then trades in, then you can just answer the 2-3 Poisonous with your Spy Mistress anyway. It works out pretty well no matter what.
True enough. And Blitzchung, he's gonna take this face attack, but after that, I think there's a very real question if he wants to step the Miscreant immediately. And this is something I still struggle with, even with hundreds of games of Rogue under my belt. Because in the mirror, even though it looks like a Miscreant on board, it's likely to stick. Because in theory, this 3-1 would prefer to trade over the 2-3. Some gets answered, and if it does, suddenly Blitzchung's turn 5 is looking very slow. So I actually really like that he's cashing it in as early as now.
I really like that you bring it up, because I have to be honest, I don't think I would have made that play. If I was Blitzchung, my thought process would be, brilliant, I've got the Kronks, I've got decent follow-up on next turn with this spell I can generate from Ethereal Lackey, and then start to pop off with Galakrond. But I guess with the lack of invokes he's had so far...
That is the game plan. It's just looking that at the turn 5, it's that it's very slow if he doesn't get any of the more proactive lackeys. I don't think he particularly wants to just be playing Snake Trap and then 2 lackeys.
Very interesting play. I mean, this is consistently what we've seen from Blitzchung, is he takes these slightly weird, non-obvious lines, at least at a first glance, and generally, even though I am slightly weirded out by them at first, I tend to agree with him after I've had a lot longer than he has to think about it.
And FroStee here, faced with a decision himself between whether he wants the Faceless or the Titanic for value trade. But he says he's just gonna use this 3-1 to trade not the cleanest into the Poisonous minion, but I think he's got bigger plans for the Faceless later. Another step!
Feels like the only choice to me.
This is just lackeys galore, really good considering the Faceless Corruptor in hand. Rush Lackey, amazing too.
Yeah.
And if we rewind back to the exact moment where Blitzchung stepped his Miscreant, I think we saw a very frustrated reaction from FroStee. So just judging by FroStee's reaction, I think Blitzchung definitely made the right call stepping it there. Ooh. So the interaction with Snake Trap.
And
that
with
work the way-
Faceless Lackey.
True.
He can just get 2 2-drops here.
Very true. There's not even enough board space for all the snakes I want to generate, but I mean, if he wants to clear the Khadgar through a minion trade, it has to proc the Snake Trap, right? But of course it doesn't make sense anymore now that he's filled up the board. Just cute to note.
Yeah. I think overall, definitely the right play there for blitzchung. He spent all his mana, and he, importantly, still left himself a Lackey for turn 6, so that he has the potential to go Faceless Corruptor. But if that's not the right play, he can also just deviate over to Kronk's Dragonhoof. It's looking very strong now for blitzchung, unless FroStee can find those invokes very quickly.
Speaking of Faceless Corruptor, it does look very likely that Frosty's going to go for one of his own during this turn, so he can bump his 1/2 into one of these lackeys, Faceless up, trade over Khadgar, and I suppose Evil Miscreant.
Yeah.
I wonder.
And then 1/4 into 1/1.
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate that he can't pop off with the World Kick Master, because that's actually a pretty powerful card a lot of the time. Most of the combo cards in Rogue are good cards.
And Frosty can do the thing too, he can step his Miscreant this turn. Because, again, his turn 6 is looking like it's pretty light if he doesn't create more Lackey generation with the Miscreant. I would like to see it step. Oh, okay, this works. It shores up his can't speak today. Shores up his turn 6 mid-game play. Instead of lackeys, he says he wants tempo. I like it. But
Yeah,
all
I think
of
that's
like,
very smart.
painful. But not at zero cost to blitzchung.
It's not, but I think you're just so happy there for blitzchung. I mean, you could argue that's actually a benefit for blitzchung, because all he wants now is the invoke cards to be able to start popping off with his Galakrond. So does FroStee, obviously, which is a good thing that his Faceless Corruptor also left the deck.
As far as reborn minions to get, that one fills out his curve the best for this turn. I think if you're Frosty, you gladly just play the Ancestral Guardian, hope that they don't have the Galakrond, and then play your own. Is there...
It's just not that good, though, Gia. Like, it just gets taken up by the hero power and the 2/2. I guess you can hope that they don't have a way to spend the rest of their mana.
It's not that good. I'm saying it's not that good. But
Yeah.
everything else looks worse to me, doesn't it? At the very least, they hero power at once. You get 4 points of lifesteal, and that's 4 points to their face. That's a way to spend your turn and then play the Galakrond.
Your presence offends me.
I'm saying it's decent given the circumstances. As far as other reborns go, I think the best you could ask for that turn is Restless Mummy, and this is still above average.
No, I'm holding you personally responsible, Gia. This play was not good enough.
Alright.
Well, the main thing here for blitzchung is just that every invoke he can find is a big tick in terms of his game plan. Kronks and Galakrond as a duo are getting more and more powerful all the while, and to be honest, if it ends up that he's able to keep getting this damage to face, it really doesn't matter whether or not his Galakrond is fully invoked, because Kronks will be able to come through to just deliver a nice, easy lethal.
Ooh. Seal Fate? I can't tell you that I've been counting the invokes on this. But if Frosty's playing for Galakrond this turn, I think that might be the 4th.
I think it might be the second, actually,
What?
weirdly enough.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Second. As long as it's a level up invoke and not just the first of a pair.
Yeah, it's hard to tell with the artwork as well sometimes, despite all the Galakrond rogue that we've played.
Luthor is great.
Yep, very, very good card to get there. As FroStee, if he can get runner, both invokes that he can both play on the same turn, then he's looking to be in a decent position, I suppose.
It has to be close to almost exactly that, right? Because blitzchung with his own Galakron this turn, even if it's not for full value, seeing that FroStee has 1 card left in hand, and if it's Galakron, it's only drawing 2. For sure, blitzchung just plays his own.
Yeah, this is definitely a Galakron turn, especially when you are still going fairly wide on the board, and you can set up potentially, oh my goodness, for a Kronk's buff on the following turn. But if it wasn't good enough already, that Heist Baron Togwaggle is absolutely insane.
Indeed it is. I'm actually surprised to not see the Goblin Lackey here, so that he could clear off everything on board instead of the Titanic Lackey. Could be thinking Goblin gets much better later because he does have Kronks on board as something better to rush, but if you're blitzchung, I feel like the only way you're losing here is cross-cron into Tog, and removing both the lackeys would shut that off.
Well, either way, this wand won't be playable on the following turn, which I agree. I think that was maybe he could have gone for, like you said, a full clear that puts him in a better position. But he is now fully protecting his Togwaggle, setting up for Kronk's dominance on the following turn, if not lethal.
So I think FroStee's slight bend to look down and see his deck list is exactly what's going on here. He's off camera, but looking for the outs. What's it gonna be? A flick to get rid of the Tog, but that gets rid of his own Tog.
Well, I think it's pretty much Kronk's off the Galakron is his best shot.
Or just waiting. Oh, sorry, the flick's in hand already, of course. Conveniently, because of the Khadgar, gets rid of both.
Aha, it worked in FroStee's favor all along that 2 minions are summoned.
That was the plan. Don't ever doubt it. Oh my gosh.
Oi, oi, oi. Well, that is more than good enough, I would wager. This is all in on FroStee finding not only the Kronks off the Galakron, he's going to have to get something else in addition because of the power of this
There's
Edwin.
nothing. I'm just going to say it right here. There is nothing. Blitzchung can even play Secret, Blackjack, Shockbot, Edwin. Okay. Alright, Blitzchung.
Well, there is something, right? Because FroStee is playing the non-secret version, if he draws 2 cards which are exactly Kronks and Sap, then he's in the game.
Brotherhood shall prevail.
We've seen crazier things. We've seen Kian go wand for exactly...
What?
Okay.
There's the Sap.
This... That's the...
There's the Kronks!
Oh my god!
Whoa!
And he even gets the Miscreant to develop as well.
This is not over.
This is wild.
There is the ambush for Blitzchung, which is a bit of a disaster for FroStee, to be perfectly honest.
No, he can play the Miscreant first. That triggers
the
the
Miscreant
ambush.
first?
Yeah.
Oh,
He goes Kronks for the AoE. Saps the Edwin. There's still a 2-1 shot bot left, but I think you're happy with this outcome for sure.
yeah, you're a genius.
Or you hold the Kronks all
Back
together.
on the Kronks.
Alright. Isn't this
Wants to get more.
mega greedy? Is this lethal now for Blitzchung? There's 10 on board, another 10 from Kronks. Not quite yet.
I guess he knows he's surviving Kronks. It's only Kronks, Shadow Step Kronks, that FroStee is afraid of.
But still, just the Kronks coming down on board for the buffs makes it so that not just the Shotbot Reborn survives, but also the Shield of Galakron, and also the Kronks itself.
Yeah.
Might be caster visioning. For sure FroStee was thinking about something we didn't mention, but...
Well, I think it's Shadow Step off the top or off of the Ethereal Lackey was a big part of his thinking.
Okay.
That he could go for a board sweep and then summon an 8/8 thereafter.
Darkness wanes.
Don't let the door hit you.
I guess the punish was exactly just Kronks in terms of paying off a wide board. That's really the only card that Rogue runs.
You are too late. His return is nigh.
Okay, that's one big board sweep.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
He's ruled
Devoted
out
Maniac.
I would wager that. Yeah, maybe the Maniac is better than the Miscreant because actually potentially clears off another minion
Yes.
for that cost instead of generating 2 lackeys. I like it. Or as we can see, blitzchung has Kobold Lackey with no other burst.
Well, he's looking for Ethereal Lackey. Even if he goes Maniac, then Miscreant, he could still hit the Shadow Step, but he hits Fan of Knives. Instead, he doesn't have to trade at all.
Yeah! Doesn't attack with any minions. The Snake Trap is not active. Oh my gosh! Kobold Shadow Step, if it's another Kobold!
Oh my god, Gia, it's so close!
It really is. But blitzchung has time. He's really healthy. FroStee also hasn't tested for Explosive Trap yet either. So if blitzchung wanted, he could set FroStee to 2 and just say, you can't attack my face. I don't think FroStee would fall for that bait, but it would be pretty cool to watch.
And he could do that and then also play the Deathwing next turn.
Yes, but it's gonna be the Edwin this turn first. This game has me hyped. I love Rogue Nurse.
Hog Waggle!
Gotta be that, right? Gotta start
Yeah.
with that. So what are we looking at? Even if he gets Shadow Step off wand, he can't quite step his Kronks this turn.
No.
But maybe he gets ways to deal with this Edwin more cleanly. Maybe he gets taunts to help him preserve his health total.
Eviscerates, taunts, he just needs something to answer this board.
Okay.
Oh, that is low value. Very, very low value.
Indeed. So does that mean the Kronks has to go into the Edwin? It does. And
But then the snakes come.
yeah, just not enough.
If you can go Ethereal Lackey into Prep, that doesn't do it.
Prep Seal Fate? Oh no,
Can't even
sorry.
do that, not enough
Yeah, it's
mana.
been damaged now.
In the shadows.
FroStee doing everything he can to stay alive from his perspective, but blitzchung has the burst. And what was such a tight end game there. My goodness.
Incredibly well attempted there by FroStee. He was almost in with a chance of taking that one back, a very real chance, but it just doesn't come together in the end. blitzchung, I think he gave it the absolute... he played it very, very well to get to this point, it's got to be said. And while I can commend FroStee on his fortitude, it does mean they are now up to 2 games apiece. And as we were expecting, it is the rogue from FroStee that's suffering.
Mm-hmm. I will say a lot of FroStee's plays in the mid and very end game. I still question the holding back of Kronks for another turn. It just struck me as really greedy. And again, we were saying the only punish there was, I think, exactly the Kronks on the other side. But I feel that the payoff for just FroStee's own Kronks, it still gives him a pretty good swing on board. A 6-6 versus a 2-1 empty board otherwise. I'm not sold on saving it.
It's a hard thing to say, like, because again, the Shadow Step could have come off the top, which maybe was the only chance that FroStee had of taking the win overall if he can clear the board and then also develop an 8-8 alongside it with the second Kronks. It's such a tight and very delicate dance that they are pulling between those 2 rogues. But with all of that said and done, whether it was right, whether it was wrong, it's all led to now with the final game of the day. It's going to be the Rogue up against the Hunter. FroStee on the Rogue and blitzchung on the Hunter. Now this matchup, Gia, if I had to hazard a guess, I would say that the Highlander Hunter with its continual face damage is in a pretty good spot against Rogue's lack of healing.
I would agree, especially in the early to mid-game minions that they run. There's Fairy Dragon, Evasive Feywing, both of which Rogue really struggles to deal with. They kind of run some of the cards that Rogue hates to see the most against Dragon Hunter, and then just fills out the late game with all the Highlander stuff. The opener for both players is looking very strong, though.
Yeah, I'm not even sure who I'd favor more here. The Zephyrus, generally, you have to swing the advantage into whoever has Zephyrus in their starting hand, just because it allows you to dominate the board early on if you need to, or transition beautifully into a more late-game removal plan.
FroStee already kind of a tough decision whether he wants to develop his Spy Mistress or the dagger. He could take it slow and just kill off the sharpshooter over 2 turns with the dagger hit and the Pharaoh Cat.
Yeah, I lean quite heavily in favor of the dagger here. The interesting thing is that he doesn't attack at all, which of course allows for Seal Fate to take out the the Dwarven Sharpshooter if the hero power is used to take out the cat. But from blitzchung's side, that was a very suspicious play. Why wouldn't you attack in and just try and take it out over 2 turns?
You hit the nail on the head there. And you know what? I've had this play be done to me before when I was on the rogue side. My hunter opponent said, that's fishy. They bumped the damage anyway and then did the hero power to play around Seal Fate. You know what? I feel like blitzchung, with his aggro expertise, could go for that. If he wants the hero power at all, I can also see the argument for playing the Felmo, but he takes the bump, and I love it. I think it is so smart.
This is great recognition by blitzchung. He knew exactly what was up. Throwing away a free 2 damage off the hero power without expending a card says, that's not even good enough for me. Instead, we're going to take the trade the old-fashioned way and get the Felmore down, and all of a sudden, he's in a really good spot.
Definitely. Even Coin Bone Wraither lines up magnificently versus the Candle Taker. I guess that does present a Seal Fate target that he was so desperately trying to deny a FroStee of the previous turn. So is there an argument for holding back even longer? Every other play I feel is even worse into Seal Fate or floats too much mana.
Yeah, Scavenger's Ingenuity, I don't think can draw anything on the 1 mana slot with no boars anyway. I guess the main benefit here for blitzchung of holding back is he can still go for the Bone Wraith or now the Twilight Drake on the following turn, but it keeps the coin for being able to go Siamat on turn 6, which if you're fairly vulnerable to a Seal Fate either way, then it does make sense to go for it this way.
You can definitely see that. My one complaint is, why does Primordial give you Brightwing when Zephyrus already gives you Brightwing? Come on, Gin.
Sure.
So, FroStee can do the Seal Fate now. Well, he's got the guaranteed target and develop the Spy Mistress if he wants to. Can the Fel Maw attack it into the Spy Mistress when it wakes up?
I don't know.
I am not sure either. I would say yes, because the things that target random minions tend to ignore stealth, like Deadly Shot, etc. I would think it works that way.
Yeah, attack a random enemy.
I'm not gonna see the Seal Fate this turn. Let's roll. Where is this guy gonna hit? FroStee developed the 4-3, I think, very smartly to maybe provide a bad target for the Spell Maw, but I think it went exactly where blitzchung wanted it to go.
And now, Gia, I'm seeing a pretty juicy play here with Coin Zephyrus Shadow Madness that allows you to steal the Candle Taker and put yourself very far ahead on the board.
That is very UC indeed. FroStee will have his stealth minion to guarantee have a target.
Whoa.
Faceless, but doesn't seem quite good enough against the board. FroStee is not happy about that one.
Yeah, not happy at all, especially the Faceless Corruptor. It's just not so good here. You can't do that with the 2-3 Poisonous still left on the board. Instead, I'm anticipating trade into it, play the Seal Fate, set up for Faceless Corruptor on turn 6, I guess.
So many options.
The Corruptor, just 3-1 into face.
Really?
Faceless, and then kill the 5-4 Zephyrus, and then dagger down the 3-1.
Maybe, yeah.
You're left with a 4-1
It's so much
versus
damage
2-3.
otherwise.
Yeah. It really does look like far too much.
So
It's
many.
obviously less clean because you're so used to playing Faceless after a minion has taken a value trade. But
Yeah.
that's just the way blitzchung has set it up. no other minions than the one with 1 health remaining.
I
I think FroStee has to bite the bullet here.
FroStee agrees. The main thing he's afraid of, as you always have to be with Rogue, is losing your health total. It's just too scary to take 8 damage if you go with the alternative line.
Whoa! blitzchung just transitioning into Dragon Hunter here. Probably not the play this turn because it's loading quite a bit of mana. You could see something like Ingenuity and try to get Zixor.
True. Are there any more expensive beasts in the deck? Because if there's any degree of ambiguity, I think you would err on the side of just playing the safe Bone Wraith.
I think that most Highlanders these days are just playing Griffin and Zixor, both of which are playable, but of course Griffin lines up pretty yucky into this. But if that's a draw, he could just play a 7-4 and trade off his 2-3.
Good point.
Or just do this now while he has a dragon on board. Don't hate it.
Well, in hand, right?
Okay, FroStee, he finally gets board back. Will it be too late? As far as we can see, blitzchung doesn't have a very bursty hand anymore, so this could be the window for FroStee to take it with Lackey Tog up for play next turn.
Yeah, you're not wrong. He's going to have to, I think for blitzchung's sake, hope to get something a little bit more impressive over the next couple of turns. Because if FroStee is able to hit the Galakron, the Kronks, any of the big boys off of the Togwaggle wand, which I'm definitely expecting to come down over the next turn or two, FroStee's in a very good spot, and therefore blitzchung's primary game plan has to be load up as much damage onto the board as possible so that he can't get away with playing Togwaggle.
Agreed. And so, looking at that, it's going to be Twilight Drake plus Ooze. I don't really hate the usage of Ooze just as a Bloodfen Raptor. Bloodfen Rapper. That's my rap name. Because removing a dagger is hardly worth much in this matchup, I'd say. Wow, that's a great draw for FroStee.
That is a fantastic draw. That pretty much gives him the liberty to just play out the Togwaggle, whereas before he may have been a little bit too scared of the damage.
So, I'm thinking Big Ol' Whelp.
Yep.
Probably
Me too.
Not going to get played anytime soon. It could be played along with the wand next turn.
Maybe, yeah. Well, it all comes down now to FroStee as to what the wand can conjure up. Because if it's not something pretty magical, he is significantly behind. And with the Dino Tamer Bran off the top, is anything enough anymore?
Always Galakron Krunks. It's always a possibility. Even Sap onto King Crush, I don't think it's terrible because it's not turn 9 yet. FroStee's just squad of, not even looking at the screen. He's spraying up to the skies. If you're blitzchung, he's whoa! Wait, see that? I'm shocked. I'm shocked.
This does trade very well. It sets up for lethal over the next few turns, I suppose. Maybe with just hero-powered Dino Tamer on 7.
Okay, I guess this way there's more potential to stick a big minion versus playing the Bran that turn. Probably gets traded down by Tog plus something. This way you potentially stick Siamot for the 6 damage, and then you have the Bran from hand. I think that's blitzchung's thinking, but somehow I don't necessarily agree with it still.
So FroStee has the safe play this turn of Flick Skyshiv to take out the Siamat, but I think we can both agree it's going to take something a bit more impressive than that to take the win.
Agreed, but no answer for the Siamat available yet.
A Kobold Lackey would deliver that answer. That is a big, big deal.
Honestly, the Rush Lackey would have done it as well with his Spy Mistress, but this is super clean. He can even kill off the Ooze if he wants. And the taunt in play, as you so succinctly pointed out in your plays video, blocks Mr. King Crush.
King Trade is one of the saddest sights in all of Hearthstone.
In the shadows.
Agreed. Even the two of us as rogue stands feel sad to see the Crush run into this shield of Galakron.
I have my limits. I don't wish that bad of a fate on the Dino Tamer.
But there's now room for pivoting, I was going to say, and I like this from blitzchung. The Desert Spear looks super clean here, and then makes room for both the Bran at some point, or the Dragonbane. The narrower the board, the better both of these cards get later on.
Well, what I really want to see on this turn is actually Desert Spear to go face, because that sets up beautifully lethal on the following turn with Dino Tamer Hero Power. I guess actually having said that, you could get away with going for double trade here, and you still set up lethal on the following turn with the hit to face. So this seems like a very smart way to go about things.
I like it. And FroStee's praying for the Galakron.
It does not deliver.
He's
He's praising for Galakron, but maybe his deck misheard him.
Can he draw off of the big old well? I don't think there's much. Not enough mana to play the other shield. So is it try for Taunt Lackey?
Yep. So far as I see it. Obviously, he does not know that he's dead. But from what we can see, that's his only chance.
Yeah. And he would have the mana to do that anyway, post praise, but oh man, the shield. One mana short. I couldn't tell you which of these mana slots is more likely, but I would say the 6 cost.
Yeah, there's a lot of 6 mana taunts.
Oh my gosh, blitzchung completes the reverse sweep, I think. Or was it not a sweep?
Well, either way, he comes back with an incredibly impressive performance there. The Rogue, again, just looking like the weak spot game after game with this weekend. Possessi, omitting it entirely from his lineup, just finds himself in a great spot. And now, in this series, for FroStee, he does end up losing 2-3 to blitzchung. It's a repeat of what we saw just earlier on in the season in the top 8 matches, where blitzchung was able to take the win. And now, arguably, it matters even more because, like you said, just one go around on the round robin, once against each opponent, every loss is so devastating.
It really is. Again, feel for FroStee as somebody that recently got swept on Rogue as well. It just seems like today's matches on APAC, at least, are proving very, very directly how much Rogue can be a weak link when the rest of the decks are lining up well, and that room for innovation seems to be all decks that are good against Rogue so far. That's really, I think, the story of this weekend, and I expect that we'll be seeing some similar panouts even in other regions.
Cannot wait to see how it shapes up, like you said, over the other regions and heading into Saturday and Sunday. But first of all, we're going to take a look back over today and how things are shaping up for all of our players. Like we were just saying, FroStee taking a loss there does mean that he is now 0-1, the first player in Division B to end up down at the bottom. Obviously, it won't stay that way for long. Half of the field will be joining him down at 0-1. But gotta say, overall, it's looking pretty good yet again for the Japanese players there, with the only Japanese player to lose being Alutemu, who had to lose. or Possessi or Alutemu, one of them had to take a loss. Impossible for the Japanese players to go 3-0, but still a very strong day for them to start things off.
It is indeed, and that is only day 1. And for anybody that wasn't watching too much Swiss at the beginning of this season, on Sundays we did only have 3 matches, but nowadays, since we're going into the round robin, every weekend we'll have 14 matches across a single region. So it's even more Hearthstone. Longer breaks because we have longer work, but hey, at least my content's pretty long.
Yeah, it is indeed. And the same start time every single day here for this weekend now, no longer starting a little bit later on Sunday. But that does mean we're all done here for Asia Pacific. It was a very exciting day of Hearthstone. Some of these back and forths, I feel like they had no business being as close as they were, but still ended up game after game coming right down to the wire. And with, along the way, just the balance I like. A couple of improvements that could have been made, but some really inspired play along the way as well.
I definitely enjoyed that. And tomorrow we're going to see probably a lot more of the Division B players. Any Samuel Sao fans out there might be getting to see him on stream for the first time this year. Looking forward to see whether he's really tightened up the play to make sure that he's not relegated, because it does seem like among the players in Division B, he's had the most to prove right now.
Well, we'll have to see when we head into tomorrow. But for now, we are, of course, going to send you, as usual, over to Raven and Sottle for Europe. And then after that, it is going to be TJ and Frodan bringing you all the way through Americas. So thank you so much for joining us today. Remember to hit subscribe here on YouTube Hearthstone page to make sure that you're always notified when we go live with Grandmasters. But thank you so much for joining us once again. And we'll see you tomorrow for the continuation of Asia Pacific Grandmasters.